everyone, this is Sally from ArtiSally, and today I'll be showing you how to crochet this cute little snowman. This is part 2 of my Amigurumi series. To see more Amigurumi tutorials, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Here's an overview of all materials that I have been using for this project. Don't forget to use a crochet hook that's smaller than what your yarn asks for. Let's get started with the head. Make a starting chain. You do this by folding your yarn, placing your crochet hook in between. Then you twist the yarn and pull up a loop, like so, and there's your starting chain. Then you chain one more, and you start with row 1. In row 1 you work 6 single crochets in the starting chain by using the yarn under method. It's 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. This will bring your stitch count to 6 stitches. Pull the tail to close the gap, and then place a stitch marker on the last single crochet made as soon as you've finished recounting your stitches. Make sure you do this with every row to make sure you didn't lose any stitches nor accidentally added any. Once you've placed your stitch marker, you can move to row 2. In row 2, you'll increase in each stitch around, and you do this by putting 2 single crochets into 1 stitch. You keep on using the yarn under method, and you'll be left with a stitch count of 12. Move your marker and make your last increase. Then bring your marker up by putting it around your last stitch made. In row 3, you work 1 single crochet followed by 1 increase. You do this 6 times in total, and you'll be left with a stitch count of 18. By now you may have noticed that your work has started forming a hexagon. This is because you have 6 increases, so don't worry, it's only a good thing. In row 4, you'll work 2 single crochets, so 1 single crochet in the following 2 stitches, followed by 1 increase. You do this 6 times again, and you'll be left with a stitch count of 24. As you can see, the hexagon is starting to shape even more. This is because you keep on putting the increases right above each other. In row 5, you'll work 3 single crochets, followed by an increase. You do this 6 times in total. You'll be left with a stitch count of 30. In row 6, you'll work 4 single crochets, followed by an increase, and you do this 6 times, which brings your stitch count up to 36. Work your last increase, and then move your stitch marker to the last stitch made. Off to row 7. In row 7, you'll work 5 single crochets, followed by an increase, and you do this 6 times once again, which will bring your stitch count up to 42 stitches. You can still see the hexagon that I have shaped by putting the increases right above each other. This will make it easier later on to embroider the face, as it brings symmetry to the work. In row 8, you'll work 6 single crochets, followed by an increase, And you do this 6 times again, which will bring your stitch count up to 48. Don't forget to keep on using the yarn under method. Work your last increase, move your stitch marker, and then go to the next row. From row 9 to row 13, you work 1 single crochet in each stitch around, and you keep your stitch count at 48 stitches. Keep on using the yarn under method, and this is what it looks like after row 13. In row 14, you'll work 6 single crochets, followed by 1 decrease. This will bring your stitch count down to 42. I'm using the normal decrease in here, but later on in this video I'll be showing you a different kind of decreasing that I personally like more, as it leaves less gaps. In row 15, you'll work 5 single crochets followed by 1 decrease, and you do this 6 times again. This will bring your stitch count down to 36. Be mindful to keep on counting your stitches to make sure you didn't make any mistakes. In row 16, you work 4 single crochets followed by 1 decrease, and you do this 6 times in total. You'll be bringing your stitch count down to 30. Move your stitch marker and go to the next row. In row 17, you work 3 single crochets followed by 1 decrease. You do this 6 times in total, which brings your stitch count down to 24. In row 18, you work 2 single crochets followed by 1 decrease, and you do this 6 times in total, which will bring your stitch count down to 18 stitches. Keep on using the yarn under method. In row 19, you work 1 single crochet followed by 1 decrease, and you do this 6 times again, which will bring your stitch count down to 12 stitches. It's time to stuff the head. Grab a handful of polyfill and start stuffing the head gradually. The shape needs to be nice and round, so make sure to not underfill it. Just keep on going. I like to press the filling material more towards the sides and create a tiny little gap in the middle, and that's where I add in more stuffing. And I keep on feeling whether I'm content with how round the head will be. So I just like to keep on going, and I keep on pinching my head, and once I'm content with it, I move on with the body. For the body, we start the first row by working in the front loops only. So as you can see, I only grabbed 1 loop of the stitches made, and I work 1 single crochet followed by 1 increase, and I do this 6 times in total, which will bring my stitch count up to 18 stitches. I am using the yarn under method. So make sure you work in the front loop, as this will create that tiny little edge that will separate the body from the head, so to speak. So in here we make an increase, and then one single crochet, and then one increase in the front loop only, one single crochet, and then we remove our stitch marker and work our last increase. Move the stitch marker and go on with row 21, where you work 2 single crochets followed by 1 increase. You only use the yarn under method right now and work through both loops of your stitch. You'll be left with a stitch count of 24 stitches once you finished your last increase. In row 22, you work 3 single crochets, so 1 single crochet in each of the following 3 stitches, followed by 1 increase. You do this 6 times in total, and you'll be left with a stitch count of 30 stitches. Now for row 23, where we work 4 single crochets. Let's do 3 and then 4, and then you work 1 increase. You do this 6 times in total, which will bring up your stitch count to 36 stitches. In row 24, you work 5 single crochets, so 1 single crochet in each of the following 5 stitches, followed by 1 increase, and you do this 6 times again, which will bring your stitch count up to 42 stitches. Keep on using the yarn under method. Your last stitch is an increase once again. Move up your stitch marker and continue with row 25, where you work 6 single crochets, followed by 1 increase. You do this 6 times in total, and this will bring up your stitch count to 48 stitches. In row 26, you'll work 7 single crochets, followed by 1 increase, and you do this 6 times in total, which will bring your stitch count up to 54 stitches. Keep on using the yarn under method. And work your last increase. As you can see, the hexagon is starting to form itself again, which is a good thing. In row 27 to row 32, you work 1 single crochet in each stitch around, and you'll keep your stitch count on 54 stitches. And after row 32, this is what it's gonna look like. And we'll start with row 33. In row 33, you work 7 single crochets followed by 1 decrease, and you do this 6 times in total, which will bring your stitch count down to 48 stitches. I wanted to show you a different kind of decrease that's worked around the post rather than in the stitch. This method leaves less gaps in your work, and it will be explained in depth in a separate video soon, where I'll be showing you more basic stitches that I use for my amigurumi. Like you can see, this is how I do it, and it's way less visible than a normal decrease. So work 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7, and then you work the decrease around the post again. You continue going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7, and then you work around the post again to decrease. And you keep on doing this 6 times in total until you reach your last decrease with a stitch count of 48 stitches after row 33. In row 34 you work 6 single crochets followed by a decrease. And you do this 6 times in total, which will bring your stitch count down to 42 stitches. I'm using the post decrease again. And then you move your stitch marker and move to the next row, row 35, where you work 5 single crochets followed by 1 decrease. You do this 6 times again, and that will bring your stitch count down to 36 stitches. Keep on using the yarn under method. Keep on making the decreases around the posts. Also, don't forget to keep on counting your stitches to make sure you didn't make any mistakes. Now it's time for row 36. And here we'll work 4 single crochets followed by 1 decrease, a post decrease. You do this 6 times in total, which will bring your stitch count down to 30 stitches. In row 37, you work 3 single crochets followed by 1 decrease. You do this 6 times in total, which will bring your stitch count down to 24 stitches. In row 38, you work 2 single crochets followed by 1 decrease, and you do this 6 times in total, which will bring your stitch count down to 18 stitches. Now it's time to stuff the body. Do the exact same thing that you did with the head. So you stuff the body in the same way, so gradually. And you should be mindful to not underfill it. Keep on going until you have a nice round shape. So keep on grabbing a handful, and once you're done, you can continue by closing the body in row 39, where you work 1 single crochet followed by 1 decrease around the post again. You do this 6 times in total, which will bring your stitch count down to 12 stitches. In row 40, you decrease in around each and every post around. So just keep on going around each and every post, decrease. And you'll be left with a stitch count of 6 stitches. In your last row, which is row 41, you single crochet in each stitch around, and your stitch count will remain to be 6 stitches. Cut your yarn while leaving a tail for sewing. Congratulations! You finished the biggest part of the snowman. You finished the head and the body, and now we can move on to finishing the other parts. We'll start with the carrot nose. You'll work with orange yarn. I couldn't find orange in the weight that I used for the rest, so that's why I'm using 2 strands here. You start by making a starting chain, and then you chain 1. And then you work 6 single crochets in the starting chain. So that's 1, that's 2, 3, 4, and 5. And the last stitch, that makes 6. Pull the tail to make the gap smaller. In row 2 until row 4, you single crochet in each stitch around, and you'll be left with a stitch count of 6 in every row. You can use a stitch marker if you're afraid to lose count, but I just counted out loud, to be honest, and that's how I kept on going. Just make sure you count 6 stitches throughout each row. So you work row 2, row 3, and row 4 in the exact same way. Personally, I found it easier to work with the tail pulled outwards, so you could do the same, but it isn't necessary. I did this by putting my crochet hook in the starting chain, so to speak, and that's how I pulled my yarn or my tail out, and I continued with my rows. After finishing the 4th row, this is what the carrot nose will look like. I pulled the tail back in, same way as I pulled it out. I straightened the nose a bit and tried it out on the snowman. This is approximately the height that I would like for my carrot nose. I cut the yarn, leaving a tail for sewing. You can push the tail of the starting chain into the nose using the crochet hook. I used the back of the crochet hook. You could also sew it in entirely. Let's move to the twig arms. For the twig arms, you make a starting chain in dark brown, you chain 10 more. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then 10. In row 1, you'll work 1 single crochet in each chain stitch. This will bring your stitch count up to 10 stitches. Once you've finished row 1, you chain 1 and turn your work and start with single crocheting in each single crochet stitch made. Which will give you a stitch count in row 2 of 10 stitches. Once you've finished all 10 single crochets, you chain 1. Align the starting chain row with the single crochet stitches. Then you slip stitch each single crochet stitch to a chain stitch. So you go through your chain stitch first, then your single crochet stitch, and then you work your yarn through, and through. So chain stitch, single crochet stitch, then pull up a loop from yarn, through, and through. So again, chain stitch, single crochet stitch, pull up a loop, through, and through, and keep on doing this until you reach the end of the row. So chain stitch, single crochet stitch, pull up a loop and through, and through, chain, single crochet, pull a loop, through, and don't forget about that last stitch. Chain stitch, single crochet stitch, pull up a loop, through, and through, and then our very last 10th stitch, through, and through. Then you chain 1 and fasten off, leaving a tail for sewing. By folding it and slip stitching it, you make the twig arms firmer. This will keep them more aligned. Follow the same steps for a second twig arm. And then you can move to the next step, which is sewing the parts into place. We'll start with the carrot nose. You attach the carrot nose around the 12th row. Remember when I was talking about the hexagon as a shape? You make sure you're in between the 2 corners of the hexagon, and then if you are exactly in the middle, you'll have a nice straight line that you could use as your base to stitch the carrot nose onto the head. I have two strands because I used 2 strands at once, but it doesn't matter if you use only one, it's the exact same process. You attach the bottom between the 12th and the 13th row, as you can see. Then once I'm around the side, I work up 1 row, so I'm between the 11th and 12th row. I just lost my needle, got detached, so I'm attaching it again. And then you continue attaching it between the 11th and 12th row. go through each and every stitch to make sure it's nicely firm and nicely attached. That's what it looks like if you aligned it nicely and followed the straight line I was talking about. I just like to keep on working my yarn across the nose for extra security. And this is what it looks like. Then you move to the twig arms. You attach them around the 24th row. So attach the top in between row 23 and 24 and the bottom between the 24th and 25th row. Just make sure you place both arms at an equal amount of stitches from the middle to have a nice symmetrical snowman. You could move it more to the middle or more to the back if you would like that. But personally, I like to have it exactly at the side. So it's a matter of trial and error. Just make sure that you're content with the position before you start attaching it. I didn't stitch it up firmly yet because I wanted to see whether I was content with the height and the position, the vertical position and the horizontal position of my twig arms. So I wanted to have them both be attached before I actually stitch them up better. So I'm very basic like that, just followed the line. I made sure I was putting my needle in the right stitch. So I attached the top and then the bottom like this, and there we have it. I'm content with the position, so I'll make them firmer by going in the arms and then out in the body. And this is just a matter of feeling, so you could stitch it up in whichever way you'd like. I just wanted to show you the footage of how I normally do it. I'm doing the same now for the other twig arm, making it firmer by going through the twig arms and then around the body and then through the body again and through the twig arm until I'm content with how firm it is. Then I work my tails of my carrot nose away by going through the head several times, and then I do the same with the other tail, and then I cut the yarn close to my work. I'll do the same with the tails of my twig arms. So I do the same with the twig arms, work it through the body several times. With the white tail on the bottom, it kind of looks like a ghost, which is kind of funny. Maybe that's a nice idea for a new Amigurumi project. If you like that idea, then please let me know. Maybe it's a nice Halloween Amigurumi. By the way, you keep on going, you do the same with all the tails, and once they are firmly set several times, you cut them close to your work like this. Then you work away your white yarn, your ghost tail. First you work it through the several stitches of the last row, and then you start working it inwards. You go inwards through the body. Keep on losing my needle, the process, but you keep on going through the stuffing several times to make sure that your tail is nicely set, it's nice and firm, so it doesn't come undone. Then you cut your yarn, and this is what it looks like. Let's start embroidering the eyes, mouth and buttons. You count 5 gaps or 4 stitches on each side of the carrot nose. As you can see, I work from the bottom of the carrot nose, and then I work my yarn from one side to the other. So 5 gaps on each side, and then I pull it through like so. This is going to be the smile. And then I work my yarn 2 gaps down towards the middle, so diagonally, and I do the same on the other side, and that's where I bring my yarn out like so. And then I finish the smile by connecting the yarn, and you shouldn't make it too tight, but also don't make it too loose when finishing it. Once you finish the smile, you bring the yarn 1 row up diagonally from the carrot nose, and you count 2 stitches on the same row and work your yarn there, and bring the yarn down a row, and then finish the eye by connecting the pieces. Then you go to the other side and make the other eye as symmetrical as you can. So an equal amount of stitches from the nose, and also pay attention to where the corner of your eye is going to end. Should be on the same level as the smile, the corners of the smile. Of course, you can place the eyes however you'd like. You can also make the eyes just like I made them with the penguin. I refer you to that video then, to the end of the video, where I simply made round eyes. But I thought it would be nice to have a different face. So you could play around with my amigurumis and perhaps use a different face on each project made. As you can see now, once I'm done, I like to adjust the eyes. So in case it was too tight somewhere or too loose, I also want to make nice curves. So you should be mindful that it shouldn't come undone, especially when you give it to kids, so that they can enjoy it as long as possible. But this is what it looks like right now. Once you've finished adjusting the eyes, you work your yarn, your tail, and backwards, and then you carefully bring it down to make the buttons on the body. So you keep on going through the stuffing in the head first, while making sure not to leave any traces of the yarn, of course. So you go through the same stitch every time, and then through the stuffing. If this is too difficult for you, you could also use a new strand of black yarn to make the buttons. But I don't like to have too many tails. This way it's also more secure. You bring the yarn down right below the carrot nose on the body. So it should be in the middle. And I brought it out above row 24, so underneath row 23, and I made sure that you ended exactly underneath the carrot nose. Like I said, you go down 2 stitches and then bring your yarn back into the same stitch you came from. You keep on repeating this until you achieve the density and thickness you prefer your button to have. So keep on going up and down in this exact same way. So I was content with the thickness right now, and once you are as well, you go down 2 more stitches and you make another button in the exact same way. I only went down 1 here and then I went down 1 more, but you could do it at once as well. Then you go down 2 stitches again, just like you did with the other button. You bring your yarn up and go through the same stitch you came from, and then you'll continue going up and down until you're satisfied with the thickness and density of your button. Like this. And once you're content with the thickness of your buttons, you sew in your tail. So you bring your tail away from the button, and then you do the exact same thing as you did with the twig arms and the carrot nose. So you just go through the stuffing several times, making sure that the yarn will not come undone, and then you cut the yarn close to the body. And then you're completely done with your cute little snowman. Congratulations! I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to complete the look, you should click on the video that I'll attach in here and also below in the description box to make the hat and scarf. To make it more Christmas appropriate, but also if you want to gift it for a baby, you can make this hat and scarf in baby blue or baby pink. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, then please leave a comment down below, and don't forget to give this tutorial a big thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel to stay tuned for more crochet videos. See you in the next one.